Okay, so we're back with part 2. So we've got the chassis where it was left off now, and it's all going to start coming together because I've just started doing a few little bits. So we've got the foot plates here, and they are going to go on the side like that, and then it starts to sort of come together very quickly. So I'm just building those up. You've got a box here and the foot plate. So then that just slots in quite nicely. You can actually find where it goes. So that's a toolbox on the side there, and then we've got the same on this side, but with a smaller box, and looks like a sort of oil tank. I don't think it can't be big enough to be a fuel tank. There's like a triangle oil tank we've got to make. So that's where we are at the minute. Someone asked about these clippers in the last video. And these are, I've done a video on them before. If you go back through, I did a 2-minute tool review on these very ones because so many people are asking about them. They're little jewellery clippers, and I find them very useful. Not for everyone, but you know, I don't mind them. And another person said about the instructions, are they really that bad? Well, yes, they're complicated enough to mean that you can get parts in the wrong place, but all the information is there. It's just where you've got sort of arrows going through each other, it gets a bit confusing as to work out what's going where. It's just too much happening. You know, they're trying to get like 50 or 60 parts together in one exploded diagram. That's a little bit too much, because it's hard to follow. But if you actually cross them off, it does get a little bit simpler then. So I've got those 2 small boxes there drying off. So we've got this other foot plate here, and you get these brackets, and it's actually pretty good. They just slot in. I've got them the wrong way around. Ah, dear oh dear. I've glued that one as well. Oh dear. This is not the kit's fault. This is me not paying attention and thinking I know what I'm doing. Am I going to get that out of there? Oh, just. Right, I'm not going to get 2 chances at that. So, yeah, it's all meant to be on the inside. That's what the issue there was. I've already done one, see, so I was going to use that to, I cut all the bits off so I can clean them up, so I don't know what the numbers are. And I was just glancing. I shouldn't have glued it. It's my fault. I do things like this. I skip ahead. That's why I'm alright at ungluing stuff. So, these bits actually just kind of hold themselves in there anyway. I mean, you do need glue, but what I mean is it's a very, very tight fit. And then just square them up, but you don't want to bend it too much now the glue's on there because it will just break. I think I'd probably put a little bit of super glue on these points because they're so thin, and these are things that can hang off the side of the chassis. I'm a bit worried about it, so I'm going to put a dab of super glue on that sort of cross there. But they're coming together now, and we've got the boxes, so just need to clean these up, and then we've got this sort of towing bit to do after that. So we're on to one of the important bits as far as we're concerned, because this is going to be a vehicle towing something. We've got to put on the tow hitch. So this is actually one part. I've had to glue the end on there as well, which again, it can go a number of ways. So I've just gone for the middle, and that looks right. And then we've got this little tab there and a hole for it, and it just slides in there. That centres it, and then it joins onto the bar at the back. So once it's all in, it does lock in quite nicely. So I'm going to get that in there, and then the actual towing hook, hitch, goes in afterwards, but we'll worry about that on the second bit. So I'm just going to glue that on now. Right, so I've left this overnight. I was had about 24 hours off of this actually, not intentionally, but it happened. Fancied watching a film instead. It's always good to take a break from time to time, I think. Not that I need it, I always want to come in here, I find, but I can tell sometimes I'm not in the right mood for it, and I just come in here and I don't know what it is, try and push through it. It's really not how you should enjoy a hobby, is it? So overnight I've left these tanks. Now I was trying to think what they would be. I mean, they could be the fuel tanks. I can't see much else that could be. Just looking, there isn't really any other sizable tank under there, so I'm going to call them the fuel tanks. There's these two here. Now I have had them clamped under clothes pegs, and now we've got a nice bead of hard melted plastic, so hopefully that will go some way to actually filling that gap when we sand that back. And they're just going to go back here. Yeah, they have little pegs that go either side on the outside of the chassis, so you get one and then another one next to it. So as you can see, the tolerances are quite good. It does tend to snap in quite well. And the old chassis is actually really quite solid now, and once you've got those tanks back there, there's not going to be any movement on it. And we've got the two side foot plates sorted as well, and that's all done. So we're starting to get on now. So I just need to sand these back and then we'll be on to the next stage. Okay, so that's those two tanks sorted there now. So they have been cleaned and sanded back, but what I'm going to do before gluing these on, I'm going to get these painted, or at least primed, so we can see, because it's very hard to tell whether any of those seam lines are going to show up, and because you're going to see them on the side on, where there is a line right down there, it's worth trying to get those sorted. So the only way you're going to see is under a layer of paint. So just leave those off, and it going on as tight as it does, there's not going to be a problem putting them on at the end. So moved on a little bit here and got some stuff sorted. So what we're getting to is I've actually put these brackets on that I left off in the first part, because I've just been checking the engine mounting, and it looks as though it sort of goes in. Well, it's all a bit tricky. You've got to push it into like a hole there at the front, and then there's not really enough room at the bottom, so I wonder if we can actually maybe going up. Not really. Anyway, it does get in there once you've got there one way or another. I think if we there like that and then like that there, then it kind of hangs in that cradle a little bit, but it's all a bit hit and miss, if I'm honest. It can go a number of ways, so I think I might want to angle those in a bit more, these sort of brackets, just to catch it. They're just a little bit out. There you go, that's getting it now. So I think that sits somewhere like that, and then it's positioned with a number of things that are, number of parts that are going to come on and attach to that. So we've got, oh no, we don't have that, that's not one bit. The exhaust is going to come up through and attach to it, he says, and I think that's it actually. Yeah. Oh, I thought there was more to it. No, that's a different thing that I was thinking of. Right, so you need to be a bit careful getting that plate. I mean, you can see what I mean by it being a bit vague in places. But I think that's probably good enough. Once it's actually glued, it will sit where it needs to sit. And if you actually move these brackets in a little bit, I was trying to do this as it was drying, and it wasn't the easiest thing. They do still slip out. There. So once it's in there and glued, I think that's going to be all right. You just want to check that it's obviously central and upright. So that is your kind of, I don't know what we'd call it, engine mounting surfaces. It's very easy. This is so tight, it's very easy to be pulling on parts that are just glued. And I've got those air filters are a little bit wobbly now, and I've just pulled on something else. So that's that, and then we start getting ready to build the foot, some of the superstructure in. So looking at the instructions, this part is meant to just sort of sit here somewhere, and it looks very vague, but luckily we've got these fixing points on the side here, like that. And they fit in quite nicely here. So we've got like a cutout in the side of this foot plate, whatever we want to call it. So once that's in, this bit then comes back and joins onto it square. So that gives you the spacing there. Then the engine goes in, and then we've got the steering mechanism part of it. I think it's a motor or something. It's attached to it, I can't remember now. That goes on with an angled rod, which then gets picked up on the inside, and that fixes all that together as well. So we've got 3 points there to fix that all together, so that's good. So that's all the good news. We've then got the front steering section, and the leaf springs actually do fit on quite nicely. They've got a good tab bit there, and then an indented bit at the back that locks in, so it can't really go anywhere else. So that's fine once we've got the other one on. In fact, I could probably do that with a dry fit. I haven't glued any of this, as you can see, just as I mentioned in the last video about thinking about how we want the steering to look. So I don't really want to commit to any of that until we're ready. So this bit is going to... No, I was right. Was I right? Yeah. What's going on here? Slots into the side there, and then levels up at the back. So it sits like that, which is actually quite nice. And then you've got all the gubbins that hangs off the back of it. So that's how that's going to go. We've got the world's worst choice of making an exhaust. I just cannot believe it's been done like this. So these 4 parts here are the exhaust, and the joins are like a sort of half circle that you join together. So let's get that right. So that goes there, and that goes there. So you are expected to just slot them together. Now I have no idea what the best way around that is. I'm thinking super gluing it. I can't see any other way of doing it. That's the first issue. The second issue is where this joint is. I don't think you've got brackets that join onto the side here, and you've got brackets that join on back here. Oh, that's because it's the wrong way around. But still, you'll find that the brackets are actually the wrong way. They're on the wrong side. So that joins the wall like that, and the brackets of the muffler are on the underside. So I don't know how we're going to work that out. Also, one of the worst bits is this doesn't quite join in the locating hole. So once you get it in, it's fouled by this bracket there. So I don't know. It's not quite right. But I'm gonna get the whole thing together before I worry about that, I think. So none of this is going to be a massive issue, it's just little sort of side steps as we go along. And then we've got all of this down here, which is the beginning of making up the rear axles and all of that to set for where the wheels go at the back as well. So that's the next stage. It's 2-part pieces, so I'm going to glue these together and then we'll get into the clean up. So just slot them together, try and get them a good joint and then clean it all up. Lots of repeating parts, so I've got them all clipped out. So once they're all cleaned up, we'll bring it all together and then it joins with some rods that join each part together to give you the spacing, and then it attaches to the underside of the chassis, along with another quite complicated bit. So I'm sure it'll all make sense when it's all cleaned up. Okay, so we are carrying on with this. It's we're heading into the most complicated stage now. So once we're past this, it is actually plain sailing. So just building up the, I don't know what I'm going to call this, the axle, the rear axle construction, let's call it that. I'm going to refer to it as that. So we've got to make these two, I don't know what they are, bits, I guess, that seem to hold the axles. So that's a 2-part affair with then these circular plates on the side. So let's crack on with that. So how I've managed to do this is just to get them together like that. And using the green top again, so we've got a bit more play, just sort of tap it there and tap it there. So that's starting to set that. And then this bit just drops in. See, now, what I've been saying through this whole build, I can't see the necessity for this. You could have just moulded this in one go. It would have been a bit soft, but, I mean, you're not going to see it. But they haven't, so let's, you know, I best not go on about it, I suppose. So that's that bit in, like that. So sort of done it as one side, and then we'll just flip it over, do exactly the same. Go up and in, and then the last circular bit. Now the best thing that I can see, this would have been a perfect build to get one of those really in-depth books where they sort of take apart one of these trucks and you can see all the bits. Famo had one, there's a few other vehicles that they've done it for, but I couldn't see much on this one. But it looks like those bolts are meant to go on the diagonals, so that's what I've done, just using the instructions. So that's those two bits. So far we've got, made up from this, these few bits here. And they're the main parts in this, so we're going to sort of go like this with connecting rods between each one, so like that and like that. Oh, can't see it. There you go, like that. So that's going to make up the entire section, which then joins to the chassis, but it's a little bit tricky. So once these two bits are actually done here, so they're out of the way, so then we've got the axles, I guess, where the wheels are going to join. Now they just kind of slot in like that and like that. So it's quite important here to make sure we're all squared up, and it's particularly important because it must be due to a mismold, and it's going to be very hard to straighten up. You've got where the join is here. It on the mould line, it kind of rises up to a point and then rises down again, so you get this like beveled, uneven edge. And I'm not so sure that's meant to be there. I think that's meant to be an entirely flat edge there, which is then meant to mate to this entirely flat section there. So the reason this is a problem is because if you push it, you can go out of alignment. And if you're out of alignment and you're like that, that ain't going to be so good. And then, you know, it brings in a lot of vagueness to where we're meant to be. You've got all this movement. So I'm going to try and just true that end up a little bit as best I can through sanding and cutting, and try and get a good join there. And then once that's on, we've also got these small little rods to complicate matters further, which once cleaned go into the back here, and they kind of sit off parallel to that. Then we get, when the middle section is made, we get this connecting rod that slots over this one and joins to the bit that's behind this, and that starts to bring it together. So it is all very tricky, but once we've got the different sections sorted, we're going to be running on into this. So if I show you here, this is the next bit. Now someone asked, are the, I've said again, about whether the instructions are this confusing. I mean, you've got this bit down here, and the arrow goes like that to get it there. Why it doesn't go straight to there, I will never know. It goes all the way up, round and down. It's probably because they couldn't fit that bit in. Just do another diagram. But nevertheless, that's not what they've done. So when we're here, we've got this section all together, you've got two little connecting rods that hold this to this, as well as a connecting, you know, a main bar connecting. Then we get this longer rod which goes into the middle here somewhere, and also somewhere there, which I'm sure will make sense once you've got it, and then joins onto this bit which fixes to the chassis, and that bit goes into the back of the engine. This bit goes under these loops which are fixed to the side of the chassis, and that holds it all together. And then they go through these leaf spring mounts, and then it's actually pretty much, you know, solid. But getting there, it's going to be an issue. So I'm going to clean up these bits, and we'll join in at the next part. Okay, so we ended with the last part, just getting everything ready. As far as this this kind of chassis, this axle arrangement on the for the rear axle. It is a bit difficult, but I think if we do it in stages, it should be fine. So I've pretty much, if I come out here, you can see what I'm really trying to do is get all the parts together so it can all come together in one go, as opposed to following on and having all of these parts glued on as it goes. So the next part, now we've just turned the page into the last section, I didn't realise quite how much some of these parts bring it all together, particularly, so you've got these rods here, these rather delicate rods on each side of the actual axles, and they don't seem to go anywhere. Well, the mystery is solved, they go on the rear of these wheel housings here. So this wheel hub, that's the internal face, and there's it goes like this. So that will give you the final position, and as there's a little bit of movement to it, it will, he says, eventually line up with a bit of glue. So it goes in like that. So really, I mean, there's no point trying to worry about where these are actually meant to be and square them up until we get to that part. And equally, for the rest of this, because I've got the rods that join it all together here cut off, I don't think there's any point joining all of this together until we're actually bringing it on to these side parts, because we've got these hoops that fix onto the side of the chassis, as well as some other parts, and then we've got these, I don't know what it would be, well, it must be the suspension arrangement, because it's got the leaf springs and then two joints at the end which the axles go through. So that will all line it up, you know, we'll know by the time we get to that point that we're in the right position. So I think this is probably the best way to go at it, and sometimes you have to be a bit like this, a bit malleable when it comes to building and not do things exactly how they say, because there's so many points here that we could have got things slightly out that you're not going to know until you come to join up the last few bits. So I think that's right. I'm going to go on through, hopefully in this one session that I'm here now, just starting. I've got the potential for about 3 hours now, so I'm going to really push on, get all these parts cleaned up, get the suspension parts joined on as well, and actually get down to the wheels if possible, and then I think we should be able to bring everything together then. I'm a little bit worried about the engine block, as I wanted to spray that up black. So I'm hoping we can actually leave all of this separate, get all these parts joined on here, and then may actually be able to take this axle arrangement in and then out, or leave it off in a way that it just gets tacked on nicely, so we can spray it all separately. Because I'd like to have the clean join. I think the engine block should be black, and obviously the rear firewall and all of the chassis should be the desert yellow colour, including the internal parts here. So if I could actually build all of this up, leaving the engine out, and the steering rod as well, steering column and I don't know what that would be, the powered sort of a steering motor, I guess. It seems to have powered steering for the amount it has to deal with, I guess. If we can get all of that joined on and spray it in one go, but leave these parts separate, that's my main hope. So I best get on with it. So as I thought, when we start to get some of these parts together, it brings it together a little bit better. So I've got one of the suspension mounts on here, and this is all push fit. So the axles are pushed into there, the springs are pushed onto the joint. There is this sort of like housing here. That is the only bit that's glued together. I think there's meant to be 2 pins on the ends of these springs, but there's only one. It looks like a mismold on the inside. However, it still sits there tight enough. So my plan is to obviously glue all of this up when we start getting near where we need to be, and then I can use this with both sides to set this rod here between these 2 bits, because it's a very shallow fixing point again. You see what I mean? It gives us the spacing, so now that can be glued and set up, then it can be taken apart, all the bits fixed to the underside of the chassis. Then it's going to go back here somewhere, and then start to join it all on and glue it in as well. I've just test fitted this bit as well. This is another part that has some of these rods that connect to this, and 2 parts joined from the outside. So we are slowly getting there. It is surprising how it does look daunting, but when you start cleaning off certain bits, it all of a sudden comes together. Now I thought I'd just show you a couple things. So first off, we've got here so you've got to do 4 of these, and as you can see there's an actual sprue gate there in the middle. So I'll just show you how I go about getting rid of that. I'll actually do it off camera a little bit, but I'll explain it. I just kind of cut through it. You'll see in a second. So once we cut through one side quite cleanly with a knife, it then, I've found it just sort of breaks away a little bit. Then you push it back again and it breaks quite cleanly. And then when you've got that bit out, it's just a case of, and I know what you're probably thinking, well, we've seen this a million times before. It's just a case of just trying to get that nib out a little bit, so that the internal surface is actually all at the same level, so there's no heavy part. Then we get one of these nifty little things, which is one of the Flory skinny sticks. And I just push it in and then just give it a twist like that. And it will catch initially, as it is, it's sort of catching, and then all of a sudden there it's spinning around nicely. And there's not much of the sanding part of this pad that's actually catching it, but it's just enough to take the edge off. And there, it's pretty smooth. Now you struggle to do that with an actual knife blade, so I thought that was worth showing. So then this, I joined this together actually in a clothes peg. So I pinch it between in a clothes peg, run glue around it, and then get it out of there once it's all set up. It's just, it feels like it's a little bit vague, so I wanted to do it pinned like that. So once all of that's together, we should start to be in an interesting spot. We've got the connecting rods, which had quite a lot of sprue gates, but I did clean them off. There you go, like that. And they're good enough for what we're going to see. It's all underneath. So we've still got to get the exhaust together. We've got to get the front steering section, suspension and axle sorted as well, and get this part together. So we are slowly moving along, so I'll continue cleaning these parts up and then we should be somewhere near it. Okay, right, now we meet the main event. I thought we'd do this together. Get these lemon sprues out of the way. Now, I have glued all of this section together, and I have noticed, although I don't think it's an issue, I think the only difference is we've got a bolt here missing. I've not, hang on, I've glued the wrong one on each side, one leaf spring mount on each side. It's meant to be, I couldn't read the instructions, I see it now. It's meant to be 12 on one side and 9 on the other, and I've done a 12 and a 9 and a 12 and a 9. All I can see is that there's a bolt head missing, so there's like a blind side. So yeah, we don't need to worry about that. He says it will come back to bite me in a minute, I'm sure. Now, there has been a few issues, and there's one coming up in a minute with the exhaust, but here, these plates here on the inside don't actually fit too well. You're not going to see them, it doesn't really matter, but there's a plate here that sandwiches either side of the chassis. There's a bit there and a bit there. So that plate, it's sort of, I've had to use super glue and it's kind of bent around the chassis. I think if you really worked at it, you could get it there. However, I'm not sure it really matters for any of this, because we're obviously not going to see much in between these two parts. I don't think it has any bearing on how we square things up. So what I've done is I've got these hoops on here. I've glued them to the side of the chassis, which are like the hoops that it all sits in and it kind of cradles in, because you've got to get these axles in between those hoops, and then when you get the suspension arms, what am I going to call it? The suspension, let's just call it that. You get it on one side, then that locks it in. They're not glued in there, so they move. I've not glued the actual axle rods in there. I'm using all kinds of terminology that has to be wrong, but just go with me. So what we then do, and you can see why I want this movement. So what I'm trying to say is this bit I'm pushing on now, I haven't actually glued any of the leaf springs together, but I don't think I need to at the minute. Now, I had trouble with this, doing this as a dry fit. It's not a problem as far as fit, it's actually getting it lined up. I can't get it in the hole. I just can't get it in the hole. Oh, I have this problem from time to time. Anyway, so... oh, I did get it in there. I've done it before, and this is just going to snap in a minute, isn't it? I'm determined to do this live. Hang on a minute. It's the wrong way round, Jason. Dear oh dear. It's going to be in... oh yes. One side's in. And the other side's in. Right, there we go. So it helps if you got it the right way round. Now I'm hoping that this makes the difference. This should square us up completely as far as things that way are concerned. Now it can obviously, it can go up and down. I'm aware. Oh no, sorry, it can't. It will until I glue on this part. So we've got two bits on here. That's right. That's how it fixes. So at the minute there's a lot of movement. However, once we've got it glued onto this plate here, and then we put a bar on, which joins it all together as well. So I did this a bit differently on the other side. I've forgotten to add that bar. It squares it all up then. So that's what you want, and it should bring both axles up to where they need to be. And then they spin like that, and then that's when we fix this bar. So we know where we are in that sort of on that axis, and then here is when we get the rod in there to join it up on that. And then we'll go through to the next stage with this rod to to join in the next part, and I think that's how we're going to have to go on through, because then we've got these fixing rods as well, and another piece that goes in there. So we do this in sections. So I'm going to glue that up now, and then once this is all where we need to be, I've actually got these rods here as well. They want to go on last, you see, so where are we? So we've got rods in here that actually just attach onto these little pegs like that. And I think we're going to want to do that at the end, because again we still got, oh well no, that actually fixes that. That might be what we want to do first. I was thinking about this. So we actually get those two bits on there, then it won't move. Is that right? Yeah, that shouldn't be able to move. Then we've only got this one then. I think they want to be square like that. So they want to be straight. No idea what they do, but they're all part of the old gubbins down there. And then we've just got this bit like that, which we can actually line up and join together there. And then it's actually going to look like that. So that's what you're going to see. There's quite a lot of it on show, so it's worth checking out. Now you'll see that isn't straight, and I'm aware of that. That's why it's not glued. This hopefully is quite a lot straighter, and it does seem to be. Again, the camera always does something. If I look at this through the screen, it's the way I hold it, and the one in the background makes it look off center. But I'm pretty sure it's right. It can't really be wrong, because it's fixed in so many different ways. But again, we've only used the very slightest amount of extra fin, so if we need to, once we've got the wheels on, I can square all of that up again and just loosen some of it. And regardless of whether this is straight, what we actually want is the wheels sitting on the hard surface. So we want the front wheels and the rear two wheels all looking how they're meant to be. So I'll get them sorted before we're actually finished with any of this, and check that they're okay. So still a little bit more to do, but we've made that's quite a leap forward there. Once we've got these last few sections on, it really then flies together, because we're then on the top, you know, the superstructure. I have also, as I mentioned earlier, as I've had the super glue out, I've put some super glue on these joints here, just to kind of fix those on, make them a bit tougher, because they look like a weak point. I'm also thinking about putting some super glue on these joints as well, because I'm almost certain they're going to show up. But nevertheless, we're moving on. Right, so I think I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, and I think I've got on pretty well here. So we've got the main section at the back sorted now, and I've got in any of the sort of connecting rods as well that go with this. So I've got the two ones that we were looking at here, so these two connected, and then we've got these that go back here as well, and then there is actually another one, sorry, that connects on again and goes that way, but I need to get some other gubbins in before I can sort that out. And that leads on to the next part, which is where on earth any of these parts sort of line up. It's all very vague. So as I said, we wanted to leave the engine so we can get it out. It's actually designed to have it so it's in there. Now I can get it in and out here, so there's a bit of bending. Oh, I've never done that before. I've gone too far the other way. Right, there we go. So we get it inside the hooks, and it does move about, but it's where it needs to be. And this is all with super glue, so I've connected these parts here all with super glue, so I know I can just snap them off, and there's no problem. And if we get the engine mounted, so if we imagine this is all painted, the engine's mounted, we then just, with a dab of super glue, it's very light, it needs to be a tiny little bit longer. It should all fit where it needs to be, like that. And that then lines up this, I don't know what it would be, this housing here, it might be a gearbox, it might be the gear stick that comes up on it. We've actually got quite a few bits that need to go on there and come up through, because we're going to have this fitted there. So that needs to be in the correct position, and there is no real way of knowing where that position is, if I'm honest. As you can see, there's a lot of movement, but I think with what I've done there, that's going to mean that it's where we need to be. I think I need to put a tiny bit of brass rod on there just to catch it a bit more. It's not quite enough. I'd like to have a bit of a stronger fixing point there, so I'll probably cut off the little nib here on the end of this bar and put a little bit of brass rod, drill a little hole in there that takes it, and then it slots into where it needs to be a lot better. We've got this rear section sorted now as well, and I think that looks okay. I have tried to square it up that way and that way, and I'm going to need the wheels on. There's still plenty of movement there, so it's not an issue. I'm not convinced that that's completely straight, actually. I feel as though we're a little bit more to that side, so I won't know until the wheels are on. Once the wheels are lined up, you'll see if they go like this and like that, and we can then just bring it all back in, bit of movement left and right, and then secure it all up with a bit of super glue, and that will hold it where it needs to be. So it is all a bit vague. It's a difficult kit. It's more in the kind of realms of short run, I must admit, but it is all there. And once we got the wheels out, that really is the next final section to this, and then we can draw a line under all of this. So I'm going to keep going on this part because I don't feel as though I've really given you too much at this point, so I want to get to the painting stage in this second part. So that's it for this session, I think, but I'm going to try again tomorrow and we'll see how far we get along there. But yeah, it is certainly a tricky build. Not what I was expecting. It's not a problem, it's very enjoyable, it's just surprisingly complex. But I think we're getting there now. So I'm just making a start on the wheels now, and that really does bring us round to the final hurdle. It's just the exhaust that's slightly worrying at the minute. So we've got the front two wheels there, which are fine. One piece affairs. The locating pins, again, I've drilled them out, and it's, you know, it's a bit hit and miss, to be honest. I'd like to sort of pin it, but I think, again, if we use sort of a mixture of super glue and plastic cement, should be alright. There's not a lot of a pressure point because of the way it's designed, so you can't really like push it on firmly. But I've just tried it with some white tack and it worked, so I'm sure we'll be okay. Then the rear wheels are actually quite a nice setup. They're three parts. So you've got this bit that joins on to that bar that's in there, and it also goes on the axle, so they sort of slot in like that. So it gives you the fixing point of the bar. It's all quite loose, none of this is tight fitting, and then it glues on the back of the wheel like that. And I think I can actually glue that on there because that's going to be painted the first sand colour, and then this second wheel goes on and gives you the spacing like that. And it's actually quite a nice spot. There's a groove all around here which gives you the correct spacing. So that's looking pretty good. At the minute I've just given the tread a bit of a sand, but we'll get to that in a little bit because I've got a picture which is quite an eye-opener, showing just how low the tread wears down. It's almost like the truck is driven from Germany to Spain. It's surprising. So we might have an attempt at that. I'm not sure. You'll have to go down some way. But like I said, I'll show you that in a moment when we get to it. So now it's just a case of getting these. So we've got 4 of these to do. So I'll go ahead and do those. And then I'll really want to get this exhaust together as well. So I think that'll be the next point that we'll look at. I was worried about the level of all of this, but I've used a I've got a flat board here, and I do feel it's actually okay. It's not too bad. So my tables, the whole blooming house is very unstable. Not unstable, no, it's a very solid house. Uneven. So nothing's level, so it's very hard to eye things up. So knowing I've got a board like this, I can kind of hold it to eye and bring it along, and everything's close enough that with a little bit of manoeuvring, once the wheels are on there, we should be able to level it off. So I think what I'm going to hopefully do, I keep saying this, my plan is to kind of build this lower chassis all as one. So have the tyres painted, get it all glued on and sorted, and then build the chassis on top, the superstructure, sorry, on top of it, and work back, and then spray the underside of that, and then put it on, and spray the underside of the cargo deck and put it on, and then it's complete, and then do the camo from the outside and the weathering from the outside. I think that's how we're going to have to do it. Try and look at it is, if you think like an aircraft, this is the cockpit, and then the next bit is the exterior, and you know, that's how you do it. So something along those lines. But it's all looking pretty good. A lot more in depth than I expected. Not losing the wheel at all. Quite the opposite, actually. I wish I'd known two things. It was as in-depth as this, and that one of the nuts and bolts volumes were done on it, which is a great series. I've used them on a few builds in the past. And for something like this, there is nothing better, because they will have taken pictures of all of this from every angle, all sorts of things. You'd have all the explanations for all the question marks that I'm asking, you know, what all these bits are. But I do feel, this far in, it being a sort of £25–30 book, I've pretty much gone past the point of where I could really use it. You know, when I get into the cargo bay, I mean, it's and the hull and the superstructure, even, sorry, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So if you are thinking about that, it might be a one worth looking at. I think it's volume 23 on nuts and bolts, so might be something worth checking out, because they do tend to have quite a lot of in-depth information. So I think that's about it for this point. So I'll get these wheels sorted, and then we'll do a bit of that live. I think do some wheels and waffle on. So we're getting these sorted out. There's quite a heavy sprue gate in there, which does cause a few problems. This being this is the mating side on the inside. But it's the same thing, just with a knife. I'm just going around that rim as best I can. I'm sort of gouging it out a little bit, but it didn't seem to matter on the last one. I'm sure it's not really that much of an issue. Same old thing with the old sander. Just smooths it out. Now that's new. There's small little pegs of plastic there on the outside face, which is annoying. Oh, hang on, no, it's both the inside, isn't it? The outside's that one. Right, that's okay, not a worry. These are nicely detailed. You wouldn't need to think about anything like resin wheels or anything. These are plenty good enough, providing the tread's correct. I mean, I wouldn't like to know. That's usually one reason to get resin wheels. Now, I'm in two minds with this kit as to, you know, is it the sort of kit that, because of the vagaries, you wouldn't try and go to town on it, or is it one that, because there's so much detail there, you know, you get your metal ruler out and your squaring up tools and all that, and you do it properly and add in all of the wiring and cabling, which I'm sure there's quite a bit down through there. I don't know, I suppose you could go either way with it. I don't know if there's that much out there. I know that, well, there's radiator covers and that sort of thing. in resin. Some of the more like obvious exterior parts are sorted, but yeah, I don't know, it's strange. I'm wondering if I'm going to do another one. Probably not. It'd probably be one of the other trucks and do it as a so it probably wouldn't be this one, it might be one of the other variants of it, and do it as in German service as opposed to Spanish, if I was to ever revisit it, because they've done quite a few. They got radio trucks, and this thing was used all over the place, so I'm not sure. And of course, you know, another way, well, see, the problem is having to build the engine. I feel that kind of forces your hand a little bit, turns it into a more complex build. If there was a way to just not worry about all the stuff on the underside or the engine or anything, I suppose you don't necessarily need to put the engine in there. I don't know, it's funny. I fear that companies make a bit of a rod for their own back when they do stuff like this. The Hobby Boss Gaz AA truck series. So I mean, they've done the truck, and they've done the BA3 and the BA6 and the BA10 armoured cars on top of it. It's a similar thing. You've got to build up the entire chassis like this for something, and then you can't see any of it, and you think, well, they really should probably consider a shortcut there somewhere for people who don't want to worry about it, because it makes it such a then in-depth build for something that otherwise would be quite quick. When you get up onto the superstructure, it's simple, you know, it's a few metal plates and you're away. So I don't know, I always wonder, kind of puts me off, you know, where I would probably build one, two, or you know, even a few. You think, right, well, I've got to go through all that again. Even the Ford armoured car that I've just done, based on the Model T chassis, you've got to do actually all the same, but because it being one of the newer ICM models, and the Ford Model T being an actual relatively simple design, it's not too bad, to be honest. You know, you can rattle through it quite quickly. It's an interesting dilemma to have. As you can see, so I was mentioning about the tyre tread, so I'll pop that picture up now in the corner, or even just cover where I'm standing. And it's quite a nice picture. So this is by a chap, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to attempt it. It looks like Guillem, something like that. Anyway, he knows who he is, and he gave me permission to share this picture. So it's from his private collection, and it is of the very model we're making in the very place where it needs to be. So that is a Henschel 33D in Spain. As he said, he mentioned, it was really quite good at pulling all sorts, pulled the 88s, pulled the Flaks and everything, but it wasn't very good off-road, and that's one that slipped down the side of a ditch, it looks like, and it's getting pulled out, or it's trying to drive its way out, and there's quite a lot to be seen in that. He posted up a few more in the group as well, where you can see more detail on the windscreen. And if you actually zoom into that picture, you can see on the windscreen it says the operational divisional number of where this one's serving, with a Flak battalion. And so we need to add all of that. And I've seen them pulling the 88, although that one's actually looks like it's pulling a Flak 30 on the SDAH 20. Is it the trailer, little trailer thing? So they did get about, and it looks very much like an old battered Spanish truck. And looking at the tyre tread, there's almost nothing there. It is actually surprisingly low. So that's what I was saying, that using that as a reference, you know, you can really go to town on it. So I think I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, like I am. You've been seeing what I've been sanding off, so I'm not going to take it quite back like that. But it's a very interesting picture and a very useful one, and taken with a few others that are in the group, I should be sorted for reference. We've got one more of the actual tyres and hubs to do, and then we've actually got the rear hub. I suppose it's a 2 hub thing, isn't it? I am going to glue these on as well. I think I'm going to glue them on to the back there, and then that can all be sprayed up. And I'm hoping, where have I put it now? Am I organised or am I not? I'm meant to be organised. I'm trying to organise myself with my drawers here, and I haven't. But somewhere, not too far away, is there, perfect, a circle template, specifically designed for modelling. I doubt they're going to have this one on here, but we might be lucky. Let's have a look. What do we want? No. These are all pretty much the same size. That's close. That's closer. That we might be able to get away with. Not quite, and that's going to be too much. Yeah, I think I'll probably get away with 16 there. The other thing I've done is actually cut these out of plastic card and made my own, just measuring it and sticking it into the Cricut machine. But I think that's alright. Let's have a look at the back. That's easier because it pushes through. Yeah, I think when all is said and done with the dust, there's going to be a tiny bit of overspray. Possibly not even any. So we'll try that. We'll do 16, take these off because it's quite big. You obviously spray it tyre black and then spray the colour that you want the inside to be, and then it gives you a nice crisp edge. So we'll give that a go. So then obviously from the back, we'll drop it on the floor. But from the back, it would be, with that bit glued on, it would then just go over the top of it and spray all of that like that. And again, it doesn't really matter what happens inside, because by the time you got this on, you're not going to see right down in there. And even if you do, we're going to get the trusty old dust on there, so that will soon hide it, because I do like dust. I've done all that. I haven't cleaned the seam of that one. See, I'm getting distracted. Right, so I'm going to finish off cleaning these up and stop my waffling, and then we'll get the exhaust done. Okay, it looks like I've jumped ahead quite a lot. I've got a little bit carried away, however, not very much has been done. You've seen everything that's been attached here. So I've put on the foot plates here for the side, and I know I've wanted the same way that I wanted to make sure the wheels were right, because these things start to bug me. I start to think it's going to be a major problem when it isn't. I wanted to get the engine and the rest of this this rod gubbins, you know, the sort of drive rods and everything, all together, which I have now done. However, it is a little bit tricky. As I'm moving it here, it does change a little bit. But what we've got is a part that goes on here onto this block, and obviously this block is part of it all, so it's not attached, but that needs to attach to this, which is actually fixed onto the side of the chassis. And the way it's moulded, there's just no way that they can get it cleanly enough moulded, so I've used brass rod here to connect into the fixing point. It's all, none of this is glued. I'm just using it to make sure everything's where it needs to be. So obviously this bit needs to join into there. That's a fixed point. So then that brings this up to a certain height, which then means that the rod can attach to the back of this, giving that the height. And similarly, it all needs to go through into the engine block, and then that means that the engine block has to sit right. So that's all I've been doing, is just using a bit of sort of sighting it in by eye and making sure it's in there. There's a couple of like cradle parts here that hold the rear of the engine. I've had to build those up a little bit to square it off, and I think we are now in the right position. So what I've also done, because there's very shallow pins here, I've used a bit of rod in there as well. So this is all just brass tubing. So hopefully if we go like that and then turn it upside down, and then that disconnects it there, then we just need to maneuver around this front block here, and it does all come apart. Then we push it down there. There is reasons to have this separate, as I've said before, for painting and just general kind of use, but it is a bit tricky now I've got that firewall in. I didn't realise how much that would change things, but it's just a slight little twist and out it comes. So there we go, we're still away from having the engine block in. So that's all we've really done, is got this bit finally sorted and this bit sorted, as I've been saying, for the painting. Now I will, I probably will prime this with the amount of handling I've given it. I will put some primer on this, and that will also show up whether there's any seam lines on these 2-cylinder tanks at the back. And now I still haven't done it. The last thing, there's 2 things to add actually, is the exhaust, which I'm worrying I should have actually probably got before all of this rear axle was put on, so I'm going to have to feed it through, but I'm sure I'll get there if I can do that with the engine. And then we've got another rod system here which joins on there, and this is where that book I was mentioning would come in handy, because I assure you it would have all of the necessary markings as to where this goes. Now there is a hole, well there's a pin on this part here, but there's no hole for it to go in. So I don't know whether it's meant to be on the side of the chassis, on the bottom of the footwell, or just sort of somewhere in the corner there. So that's my next thing to work out, and that's the only reason that isn't on. So once I have worked that out, I will just fix that and then show you where that goes. I'm going to leave this off, as I've mentioned before. This is the sort of bit for the steering that joins here. Again, it's sort of separate to the engine block. We'll glue that on at the end, because I think that's going to be a different colour. So with all that said and done, we are actually finally there, bar a couple of small connecting rods again for the steering column. So there's a bit that comes down here and on there. So I'm going to get those bits cleaned up, join them on. I'll get the exhaust together and then let you know how I go about that. And there we go. There are a couple beginners, I think, following along with this. So where I say rod, what I've been using is the Albion Alloys brass tubing. So this is 0.8mm, quite a thick rod, the thickest I've got. And all you do is with a 0.8mm drill bit, drill a hole in one end, glue this in, and then that gives you a firm fixing, as opposed, and you don't get any of this kind of weird soft moulding like you get in plastic, and it gives you a rigid join. So very good for things like this, where you want a strong join, and if you're relying on plastic glue, it can bend and take up to half an hour to set off. So it's just very good for that. See, I'd like to, you know, if these were bigger pieces, you can actually cut those flat and then use rod to join that together, but as I've said before, I'm going to just need to measure these up and super glue those in and around where they need to go, and hopefully I can then feed that in and feed it out as well, because I don't want to have to mess about with painting that by hand. I think that actually goes in through there somewhere. Anyway, we'll get to that That's the next step. I am pushing it to try and get this into paint. This is going on some way, so hopefully by the time you get to this point, it's either not gone on too long and I've done some clever editing, or it's of such interest I've left it in. So there we go. But rest assured, last few bits going on, then we're going to get it into paint and we'll draw this episode to a close.